Hey guys, let me know if everybody can hear me. We'll be getting started in a few minutes here. While we're waiting, if possible, just post where everybody is logging in from. That'd be great. I know there's a bunch of folks on LinkedIn, so you may not necessarily be able to post here, but just let us know if you have any questions on the LinkedIn or not, please. So. Also, as you have questions, please post them in the Q&A and I'll be able to see them as well. So we've got a bunch of folks already within here, and we have a lot of folks already on the LinkedIn. So I'll give this about 30 more minutes and then get started. The webinar today is going to be about the analytics gap in power generation. It'll be myself and Rashid Khan. Rashid's going to be joining in a little bit here. So all right, so let's actually get started. I think we have a long webinar in front of us. This is Amit Patel. My partner Rashid Khan is also on. He'll be joining us in a little bit. Again, the name of this is the analytics gap in power generation. Now, this webinar is going to be a high-level explanation of what utilities and generators should be doing. There's a lot of detail I won't be able to go through, unfortunately, within the hour. So for detailed assistance, any questions, feel free to email Sankit at this email, spatel@Integ Consulting, or we could set up free 1-hour consultations. Again, all of this is free. You don't have to buy anything. Even if you need more than, one session, we'll be happy to oblige. A lot of this is for educational purposes as well, and you're not expected to buy any tools, do demos, anything. If you need assistance, please feel free to reach out. So let's get started with, analytics, right? If you're doing something and let's say you're building a dashboard, let's say I have a dashboard where, I have a graph, I have data, and I want to drill down. If there's just one source or maybe two sources, what you're doing, let's say a data lake, and you're visualizing, consuming in Power BI or Tableau, most companies do pretty well, right? You have your dashboards, you're able to look at them, everything is great. Now, what happens in the real world is that you have multiple sources, right? You have your data lake, your internal data, your vendor systems, the ISO or RTO, such as PJM, SPP, KISO, MISO, ERCOT. And then you have PI data that's always there, sensor data, you have possibly SCADA data. So what happens when you have all of this data is that you can't just visualize and consume it. There's a step of pre-processing with getting the data, joining it, transforming it, processing it, possibly running machine learning, and then you can consume it, or you may need to save it to not a data lake, but possibly some other storage and then consume it, right? So what we see is that when I say the analytics gap, a large part of this stack, which is really missing for utilities. They're doing great with the Power BI and the simple stuff, but the minute you need to do this, you need to get IT involved. And IT is great, but this means that costly projects. And you can only do a few of them possibly, or maybe none of them if you don't have the budget, right? So when I say that the analytics gap, it's talking about these steps. And 90% of the orgs we see, they can't do these steps in a self-serve manner, right? A lot of people now, they're able to build this in a self-serve manner, right? I can move this around, I could do whatever I want to, I could even build this, right? But I can't do a lot of this stuff. So this is what we're going to talk about. And this is the first key insight, right? is that this part is missing. Skill level is low for IT, skill level is low for the business. The self-service tool sets are non-existent, and even if they're there, they're not integrated. So we'll talk a lot about this, soon. So we started working with our clients, and we have our own solution that we used. You don't have to use this solution. Your IT can build one. You guys can get other solutions we'll tell you about. But really, the key is that we started with solutions, and we started quickly, using our platform. We were able to build some operations dashboards. We're able to do solar forecasting, turbine analysis. Um, so we have some wind prediction. We have some other dashboards here that we were able to build. But then we found that, you know, this is not necessarily moving the needle. And asking the question, we found that really only automation moves the needle, right? Because if you think of the traditional analytics, it's all about looking at a graph, right? And it's a very much a static graph. But the real world is more dynamic. So we kind of shifted to say, let's use the word data solutions. It's a more dynamic paradigm that's going to capture how businesses work. And also, automation is really going to give us the payback. And especially for renewables, there's so much data that there's going to be a need to be a shift from manual to automated just to keep up with the volumes, right? So aside from that, the other thing that we learn and the key insight is that you have to do this quickly. You can't, do these types of solutions and spend months doing them, right? So we should be able to build and operationalize these within a few weeks. So really the key insights are that, you need an integrated tool set, you want to look for automation, and you want to do these quickly. So we did all of these. We worked with a client. We took about 12 weeks, implemented 14 full solutions, and we found that using this methodology and way of thinking, that they almost 5x'd their output, right? So they were able to implement 14 solutions, 12 weeks, and almost 5x their output from prior areas. And we'll go into what helped and what fixed all of this. But before we do that, I want to show you some of the solutions that we built. The first question we asked is that, how can I automate the plant, right? This client had a lot of renewables units. They needed a 5-person desk to handle day-to-day operations. And we took about 2 months. And what we found is that the results will save almost a full FTE. And what we chose to focus on was fully automating market functions. So they're within an ISO or RTO. And we said, you know what, let's automate real-time outages. And I'll tell you what that means a little bit later. Let's automate the limits. Let's automate sending in the energy offers. Let's automate the GADS outages, because GADS has brand new rules for solar and wind. So again, doing all of this initially saved almost a full FTE. And one example of real-time outage automation is to say, can I actually look at the data and detect when an outage happens, right? And look at Pi and SCADA every second. Evaluate the tags, the faults, the switches, the statuses, and use that to figure out. And then pop up a notification to say, hey, a real-time outage has occurred, and then submit that to the ISO, right? At the same time, I could also submit a work management order, right? For example, if it's a solar inverter. And then later I'm going to create a GATS ticket. And then if needed, I can update the current limits, right? So we were able to do all of this, and we were able to get the data from the Pi tickets. We were able to create the events and send them to the client's real-time outage system. Um, the outage ticket was also pre-populated with the data. For example, these two turbines were out. We know what the capacity was, so this tells you the full G rating. So a human didn't have to do anything. Everything was up and ready. So for them, we also did a end of the month GADS where it took millions of data points and it used logic to create events, turbine or inverter events, and then it synthesized everything for their GAD system. So we were able to take one set of data and automate multiple processes to simplify life for all of the users. So again, these sims are very complicated, but really what it was consistent work to ensure that we can get to the bottom of things and understand the stream and workflow for everyone. So once we did this, we went into automating energy offers as well as our daily, hourly, and 5-minute limits. Now, we did this for non-hybrid renewables, and we were able to daily send offers, based on each segment, the contract prices, rec prices, or on other taxes. You can have other adders, and it summed all of these to calculate offers, and then you can send it to their ISO system, or you can send them directly. We also did this for solar units where you had battery charging and discharging, right? Again, this way, what happens is the unit's going to charge, discharge, and it's going to send the bids into the ISO based on what the system believes is the optimal method. Again, a human could do all of this. You could do all of this in a spreadsheet, but it involves tons and tons of work and involves lots and lots of data points. So once all of this was done, we turned our attention to compliance and said, okay, what can we do for compliance, right? Again, for renewables, compliance without automation is going to be very poor. We just have millions and millions of data sets. So the first thing we did was to say, you know what, anytime something happens, let's make sure that human behavior, being what it is, if people forget or they don't know when an event occurs, let's notify them. And let's have maybe possible workflows to say, hey, X, Y, and Z happen. Do these workflows, right? Even if they're manual. So we were able to do that within the tool as well. And then we said, hey, we may be able to send notifications for other items. For example, voltage outside of the band for 15 minutes. Or if a unit's flatlined for more than X number of hours, that can indicate something else is wrong. So we added all of these automated notifications. And then as a last step, we found that, all these organizations, the folks were often collecting evidence to submit to compliance. So we said, you know what? The evidence is right there. It's in Pi, it's in SCADA, and we can join it with data from the ISO. So we ended up automating all of this evidence collection, right? So here, for example, you can see that this is getting data for a voltage band violation, and it looks and sees, hey, am I out of band for more than 30 minutes, right? So here you're looking at the data. This is the high band, this is the low band, and you can see that this unit is just under the low band. And it's every 5 minutes that we're looking at the data. So it shows this, it shows the data every 5 minutes, the averages, and then it shows 1 minute data as well. So why are we showing this? Again, this is what's going to be required by the compliance organization for what they need to do. So let me know if any questions as I go through this, please. I'll wait kind of 15 seconds. All right. So the next step was that we combined automation and traditional dashboards for operations. So they needed operation dashboards because they were going from an O&M provider, third party, to in-house management. So this only took about 6 weeks. They're going to save about half an FTE, and a new system. They only needed parts of it, but they would have had to purchase the entire system. Would have been a very large cost of 200,000 to do the operational system. So we were able to build a lot of the dashboards, and then we were also eventually able to do a lot of settlement and other functions as well. And this isn't quite complete, but we're working on predictive maintenance for their solar and wind assets as well. We built the predictive maintenance for their fossil units, and this is essentially telling you that based, it's kind of like your car, right? You have an oil change every 3,000 miles. So depending on operating conditions, and based on how you're running, if you're doing 10, 50 miles per week, then it's going to take, roughly 60 weeks, right? But if you're doing more, then it's going to take less weeks. So based on that, based on how the plant is performing, based on looking at temperature, as well as vibration and other data, you say, hey, the next planned outage is actually at this point, but what we're saying is the projected outage should be here based on everything. So that's what the predictive maintenance system does. So that's kind of a summary of everything that was built. What I wanted to show you and why I'm showing you all of that is that, most companies are only doing very point solutions, but it's not that difficult to think big, right? Um, Even if you can build small pieces and it takes you weeks, within 6 months to a year, you can string them all together and you've worked to, fully automate a lot of what you're doing for your plant, for example. You're automating your real-time outages, you're automating your GADS outages, you can automate your limits, you can automate a lot of your compliance, you can automate energy offers. So start small, start with one of them. And I'm going to walk through kind of some of the things that are missing and the key steps to overcome this gap, right? So the first step, and this is going to involve your IT org, is that you really need to have, one or two solutions that kind of do all of this together. For us, for example, we use one solution. So I can look at the dashboards, I can do the machine learning, I can go ahead and, explore data anywhere. I can go ahead and, look for sales data if I want. I can look for, if I have another database and I'm looking for, you know, heat curves, any of this data, right? I can do this all in one place. This is going to save 4 to 5x or 5 times, it's going to be 4 to 5 times cheaper and more efficient to have this. And most orgs, you're going to have thousands of people, even within generation that are doing this, you're going to have hundreds of people, right? So the savings of people, saving hours or days is going to add up very soon. So the first step is to make sure you have an integrated platform, right? That can go ahead, connect to data, right? Step one, can I connect to any data, right? If you look here, I have connectors for Amazon, Oracle, EIA. And if I need a new connector, I can go ahead, I can connect to vendors like Adapt2, can connect to Kaiso, EIA, MISO, I can connect to Pi, I can connect to PJM, SPP, ERCOT. I mean, not all of them are here, but you can pretty much connect to any weather provider in the country. You can provide, like tier 3 is a wind provider, vendors, and you can connect to your Oracle, you can connect to your Snowflake, you can connect to, Microsoft, pretty much anywhere. The other beauty of these types of systems is once you connect once, the users are just assigned the connection. So if I'm a user and I go into, for example, Data Explorer, well, I have this GADS, right? I can explore it. I have this demo data. I can explore it, right? I can go start looking at this stuff right away. I don't have to connect to every single source because you're going to have, 50 to 100 sources. You're not going to want to put in your passwords every time and, find all of this. And it's so much work, right? Here, you have all of your connections in one place. So really, step one is make sure that whatever system you have, it's unified. These systems are all out there. We can help you build it if you want internally. You can purchase a system such as ours, but this is not very difficult to do if you want to do this. Step two, universal data access has to become priority, right? And it's asking two questions. How do I connect to any source, right? Because again, you are going to need to connect to Pi, SCADA. You're going to need to connect to your ISO. You're going to need to connect to your data lake. You're going to need to connect to your vendor data, right? Currently, it's not easy and IT has to get involved, but in the new paradigm, right? These are all just sources that you have access to, right? Once you set it up once, you can get to all of this data. For example, I'm going to my GADS data, right? I want to look at heat or any of this. I could see this stuff right away within minutes. If I want to explore this, I can, explore the data if needed and run it. So I can do all of this super easily. And again, I want to be able to do this. So again, you could see that this is giving me, explanations on the data, and I can do all of this stuff. Again, within seconds, within a few clicks, I can get all of this data. I can download this to Excel. I can do anything I want with this data, right? I can expose it in other systems automatically if I needed. So how do I connect to any source, and how do I connect without needing credentials, right? Or tons of tools? Because aside from this, you're going to have some sort of SQL tool or whatnot to go in and connect to these systems. So for example, I could have I have a SQL developer tool, right? So I have to go in and I have to write queries and I have to look at all of these connections, right? So most users they're not going to be sophisticated enough to do that either. So again, you want to combine all the different functionality of having this, of having your dashboards and being able to explore the data, right? So this is where I explore my data. This is where I can go to my dashboards and I can look at different pieces of data. So you want all of this to be able to be done in one place. That's really critical. Step three is to say, okay, data discovery is critical, right? So fine, I can connect to all of my sources, but if I can't easily search and find the stuff that I need, right, it's going to be difficult because users aren't going to, the way databases work, you have hundreds and hundreds of tables. So users aren't going to be able to do that, right? They don't want to do that. They want either to type in plain English or they're going to just type in words that they want. And they're going to want to be able to look at the data and they're going to want to have explanations of the data. We call this metadata, and you can have comments. This one doesn't, but you can have comments and everything to say, hey, this is how the data should be used. This is what it means. Is this an official source or not? So that's what I mean by data discovery, is the ability to easily go ahead and get to the data. Now, if I got to the data, let's say I have a dashboard, let's say I have this dashboard, right, where I want to add this, this is some Costco data, but for some reason I want to add heat curves. Well, I should be able to just create, look at this and say, yeah, I want to add my heat curve data, and I want to look at the columns, and I want to select all. Maybe I don't want this unit ID, right? And I want to call it my heat curves data, right? So I could go ahead and save that data. And then if I want to come to the dashboard, I can come in here and say, hey, I want to add, just the grid of this data, and I'm going to call it, I called it heat curve data, right? And just that easily, I can go ahead and add the heat curve data, right? So again, these are all from 3 different systems, but now I can combine these, I can join, I can link these, and I can move these around if I want. So I have all of this data in one place, and it's all connected, right? So I have, these are my top 10 components of why I lost generation. And if I look, for example, in miscellaneous gas turbine, it gives me all the events and the loss capacity, right? So again, the beauty of this is that once you have all of these linked and connected, it's very easy, very dynamic to update data, even if they're from, 5, 10 different sources. Again, we used our own tool called Agile Analytics Platform. You don't have to use this tool. You can use multiple tools. You can also, have your own tools. The other thing that we want to point out is currently, right, you have one IT BSA and they're serving, let's say, 20 people. What we suggest is that, they should be, each business group can have a lead, and they work with this group. And our suggestion is that these folks, if you can actually learn SQL, and people look at SQL and query language and they think it's super complicated, but it only takes about 25 hours to become proficient. If you become proficient in this, this is what happens, right? Behind the scenes, if I go to, I just created this heat curves, right? Very quickly, very easily, I went in and I looked at my data and I created heat curves, right? So let's say I go to Data Explorer, right? And I go back to, and I look at this heat curves. Well, when I create this view, right, I use this thing to get me all the columns, but behind it, right, behind all of this is something called SQL. And this is actually what's used behind the scenes to write all of this stuff, right? This is what's there. So now if I load this, this is going to give me the data. Now, if I only want, let's say, if I don't want unit ID and I want just the effective date and the season and the A coefficient, I could easily just write this, right? So I can write this SQL, see, and then if I only want season, I can say, right, I can say season equals spring, and it's just going to give me the spring data. So the reason that I'm suggesting, and not have everybody has to do this, right? But if one person can in each group do this, and let's say they serve, on typical, we find that 7 to 12 people per 12 people that are really going to be users, one person does this, it's going to enable them to build a ton of this stuff without bothering this IT BSA, right? Because this person only has so much bandwidth. This is how you actually 4 or 5x in a way as well, because you're no longer relying on this person. You can do a lot of your own work. And if you have these tools that can do this, then I can easily go ahead and build these solutions, right? I don't have to go look for people. And I can build solutions where there's different, inputs. I can have unit type, CT, Steam. I can look at all of this data, right? And it's going to be, I can build stuff that's dynamic rather than stuff that's static. So this is something that's not popular. Most companies don't like to do this, but this is probably one of the most important things you can do. Again, basic SQL proficiency. It's going to free the business from IT dependence. And once you do it, right, you're spending 25 hours. It's going to benefit you and the group for life, or as long as you're employed with that company, right? But it's going to benefit everybody. So my suggestion is find that person, start with the 25 hours, and it's not expensive. The courses are free. Some of them are, you can go on Udemy. It's, a whopping $29 for really, really amazing courses. So this is probably the highest, ratio of, effort to gains that I can suggest. So again, please, I can't stress this enough. I know it's not popular, and you can reach out to us if you kind of need help or need to understand this, but this is a pretty much zero cost way to really, really improve what generators need to do. So again, I love this Microsoft quote. If you don't know where or what your data is, you don't know your organization. And if you look at most orgs, only a few people know where everything is, right? They're in charge. They tell everybody where things need to go. But the more people you have that understand this and that can tap in, right? The more people that can go in and that can explore the data, right? If I can go in and I have all the data I need at my fingertips, well, guess what? Then that person has a ton of power. That person can go in and, find what they need, right? You're really going to free this up and make it easier for everybody to get to this data. All right, so step 5 is support non-dashboard inputs. Now, why do I say this? Because if you look at automation, right, and you're looking at, for example, we're going to look at some solutions, right? When we automated for, let's say, getting data from Pi, turning it into actual tickets. We automated for getting data from, the ISOs and doing forecasts and everything. We automated, for example, voltage band violations, right? We did this in 2 ways. One way is, okay, I have my evidence, right? This is the evidence that compliance is going to use. But what happens when the actual thing happens, right? You want to email or alert, right? And for us, we actually go a step further. What happens is that when something happens, for example, let's say an outage happens, we send this to the outage system with a workflow. And the minute, let's say something happens, for example, this is an outage, the person confirms that the unit is online, and they may have a couple of manual steps. They may have a full outage list. And if they say yes to that, then the system automatically creates the event for them, right? And all they have to do is just press the button and it automatically sends it to the ISO. There's also post-event checklists. So this is really important because for a lot of these things, you want to do alerting. You want to send out notifications as it happens because it affects human behavior, right? People, if you can tell people and lead them and tell them exactly what to do next, they are more likely to do it, right? They could still have their things and their regular procedures, but it will not hurt to have an alert, and then it tells them exactly what they need, pops up, tells them what they need to do, and just it's almost like following a standard operating protocol. So I strongly suggest that. I also suggest an Excel add-in because folks love Excel no matter how high tech we get. It's, almost the Swiss Army knife of tools. So make sure that anything that's created, you can easily go ahead and get that data in Excel. That's going to be important as well. Show that in a minute. Yes. So again, this can also replace licenses. If you have systems where it's per license, having the Excel add-in is going to save you lots of cost and time on the licenses. Step 7, make operationalization as simple as possible. For us, again, what we do is once you build this dashboard, let's just say I built it and then I updated it. What I do is I just go in and I go to access, right? And I can give access to these groups of people. It's literally that easy to operationalize dashboards. So again, you can see why it's easy to 5x because everything can be done within a few clicks, from being able to, connect to the data, right? Connectors, building connectors to all these different sources, Morningstar, pretty much anything you can think of, we can find and connect to, and you can do this with other tools as well. Once you do that, you're going to do your data discovery. I can easily, go ahead and look at all of my data, and then I can build views on top of that data. And then once I build these views, I can use them in dashboards super easily. Or I can also create something. For example, what this is doing is that it is going out, getting tomorrow's weather, and then it's calling a machine learning algorithm, sends the weather, and then it's telling me what the output of the turbine is based on the weather. So you can see how this is an elegant solution on display, but behind the scenes, if I go here, this is built. I look at the hierarchy, this is built using something called the wind prediction. And once I can get to that, it will go ahead and show me, exactly what that's doing. And there's a flow chart, right? It's getting tomorrow's wind, it's getting the model. And for tomorrow's wind, again, I spoke to you a little bit about the SQL. This is what the SQL is. And then it's calling a machine learning model this. And I won't go into the machine learning model. We'll do this in a future webinar, but this is literally all this is. It's just two pieces that it's doing to do something this sophisticated and complicated. So again, make operationalization as simple as possible. We're able to get data from, again, multiple places. This is getting data directly from the ISO. We're not storing it. This is some of this is getting data directly from Pi. Some of it we store and process. We create events. We are getting, data from Pi and parsing it to say, hey, did we exceed for 30 minutes voltage band, and we're saving this for compliance reasons. Could be used later, but we can also, alert somebody that something happened, in whatever system there is. We can alert everybody. And then we can also do notifications within here. So again, I know I went through a lot here, but I just want you to understand that you can dream big. You can do all of this with the right tools and the right mindset. This can all be accomplished. And I think if generators can really put their mind to it, that, it can really automate, streamline, and simplify life. And Excel is great, but a lot of what we do gets people off of Excel, and you should still use Excel for many purposes, but this is going to simplify life, reduce risk, reduce a lot of cost if you can do this. So again, I really urge everybody to please go ahead and work on this. Again, you guys can use your own tools. This is what we've used. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. If you guys have questions, you can post them right now. But for the most part, please email Sankit at this email. We'll also send out a copy of this webinar. But if you have questions, or even if you need an hour to sit with us or more, it's all complimentary. We're happy to help and kind of move everybody, especially the folks with renewables, into the next step for technology where you can automate and you get rid of a lot of these kind of low-level tasks and move on to figuring out what you can do to make more money, what you can do to reduce expenses, and what you can do to lower risk overall. All right, so this is going to end the webinar. Let me know if anybody has any questions, please. You can post them in the Q&A. I know there's a bunch of folks on LinkedIn as well. I think the majority of the folks are going to be on LinkedIn. So if you can post them, one of our folks should be able to grab them. If not, please just message us on LinkedIn or just message us here, and we'll be able to help everyone. All right.